So this is a video for my favourite Australian dyke about Emma of Normandy. And we're going to talk about Emma of Normandy, and we're going to talk about who Emma of Normandy was. Because Emma of Normandy is probably the most influential, successful on every score, effective, but not very nice, English queen there has ever been. She is possibly the architect for the model of queenship that defined our monarchy. She is crucial to understanding the formation of our national identity. She is crucial to understanding institutional structures that still exist now. And if the mark of success of a system is how it reproduces itself, by every measure, Emma of Normandy is the most influential British queen that there has ever been, and we don't even know who she was. We've completely written her out history. And the reasons that we've written her out history are almost as interesting as the things that she did. And that's almost as central to understanding our national identity as anything else that she did. So Emma of Normandy was a teenage girl. She was the sister of one of the early Dukes of Normandy. So this is at a point in time where we're only, I think she was only like great-granddaughter or great-great-granddaughter of Rollo the Ganger, who was the first Viking to establish Normandy. So she still speaks probably a Scandinavian language. Her mother is a woman called Gunnar. Now Gunnar started off as a concubine, and then basically Emma's mum and dad, this woman called Gunnar and her father, who was I think called Richard, they were like the Michelle and Obama. Gunnar was in charge, and her model of queenship, even though she started as a concubine, you can see right through our own monarchy, right past, I know, Eleanor of Aquitaine, if you ask me. But Emma of Normandy is a teenage girl in this family, and she has basically been married to a middle-aged Ethelred the Unready, who already has like fucking 9 children or 10 children or something, who are grown up. So there's nothing but trouble here for her. And she's married to him to try and stop, to kind of come to an agreement over the fact that her brother has been allowing Normandy be used by Vikings to raid England. And this is a problem. Now Ethelred is a really shit king. He is a twunt. He is a sad sack, middle-aged, weak-willed, petty, stupid twunt. And we know this, even though there's a paucity of records, we know this, and I'm going to tell you some of the reasons that I know this. But largely, Ethelred's problem is not of his own. Some of Ethelred's problems are not of his own making. This is a country where we are just emerging from regional kingdoms. We don't yet have a solid national identity. We don't have a solid infrastructure that allows us to defend our borders. Quite a significant chunk, in fact where I live, is like the border of Danelaw and Mercia. So Danelaw is basically spaces that have been occupied and settled by Vikings and various kind of Vikings from different Scandinavian countries for quite a long time, for a good solid 300 years. So the story of the Viking invasions is a bit of a fantasy, although, you know, they weren't very, the Vikings are kind of doing quite nicely, pillaging off our economy. They don't really want to run us because we're a very administrative economy. We are, there's a lot of reading, a lot of writing, a lot of administration involved. So they don't really want to run us, but we don't have sufficient national borders that we can get rid of these pillagers. So the Vikings are doing very nicely, thank you, of just constantly raiding us, which is just not doing, it's not doing Ethelred any good. Now, before Ethelred and Emma get married, Ethelred has a big fallout with a man called Svein the Forkbeard, who even for Vikings is a bit fucking batshit. And basically, this fallout defines their entire marriage. And Svein the Forkbeard is properly aggressive, and he's not very nice. And, we have to pay off Svein the Forkbeard, which is what we've been doing with the Vikings for a really long time. We've been paying them off every so often to try and stop them from robbing our shit, which is just not really going to do anything. So by the time Emma marries Ethelred, this has happened, and she arrives, and she's only in her mid-teens. And the first time that you see Emma appear on a charter for anything is on a charter for something called the St. Brice Day Massacre. Now, Ethelred cannot maintain his borders. He's fallen out with Svein the Forkbeard, who was actually quite close to him. And actually, there's a lot, you know, these are very intermingled. We talked about tribalism, which needs a lot of homogeneity. There's a lot of homogeneity here. This is actually, you know, places in England are very settled with Vikings. The Vikings are part of the Wessex court. You know, there's a lot of, this is 300 years of relationships and dynastic politics already here. And the St. Brice Day massacre is where Ethelred decides to ask for an act of ethnic cleansing. And this is the decisive action of Ethelred's reign. And he basically says that because I have fallen out with Swine the Forkbeard, I want an act of ethnic cleansing on all these Vikings and these Danish people. And he puts Emma's name at the top of this charter, and she's only a teenage girl. And the reason he does this is because she has come into his court as representative of these people, and the very first action is that he puts her name on a charter for an act of ethnic cleansing, which he doesn't have capacity to carry out. Although what does happen is quite horrible. And he can't really do it, but this is what he does. Now, at this point, Ethelred's political machinery starts to seize up, because everybody's going, what the fucking fuck was that? Because this actually happens, you know. A lot of people are actually killed, but it's not very effective, but it's enough to make all his political machinery atrophy. Now, once he's done this, Swine the Forkbeard, who is a bit of a knobhead, he kind of has an excuse to escalate, and this feeds back to the Danish countries that Ethelred has just done this piece of ethnic cleansing, and all of a sudden what was just stable pillaging of the UK, of England, becomes a reason that we need to be conquered. And so the blowback from this particular act of ethnic cleansing, basically takes us from having Vikings who want to pillage us and just settle here, to actually going, we need proper redress for this. And Emma's caught up in the middle of this, and the early repercussions against this are against her. And she's only a teenager, but she's completely powerless. She's behind his existing children, who are later, because that's dynastic politics. The Wessex house isn't quite as virtuous as we think. And basically the country has just been fucked up by what Ethelred has done, and the country starts to fall like paper. And we end up at war. And because all this political machinery under Ethelred has gone, we are not fucking, that was horrible. As the Vikings start to come down the country folds like paper. And there are accounts which suggest that actually there were people saying to the Vikings, if you will replace Ethelred, we'll have you. Now, the bit that I'm interested in is the bit where Ethelred and Emma go to Normandy, because they have to flee, because they're not safe here anymore, because of what he's done, because there's a war, this has escalated, political machinery has died, and they have fled to Normandy. And I am interested in the mistakes that some people have made about the decision making during this process. Now, this period is very highly likely to be the period where the terms of Edward the Confessor's exile were decided, and so the succession arrangements, should he take power again, would have been decided here. But what I am more interested in is the fact that when Emma gets home, her mother is in charge, and all the accounts of the Norman court at this point show her mother is in charge. And Emma has got this sad sack husband in tow who's going to last about 5 minutes in Normandy, and he's going to last about 5 minutes in England. He's pretty much dead in the water because he's useless to everyone. And then she goes to Brittany, and by some fluke, her fucking sister is in charge in her own right. So this woman has gone home with her sad sack husband. She's found her mother in charge of her dad's old court, where her brother's pissing around. She's found her sister more or less in charge, and she has got this sad sack husband. And all the biographies I've got say that she was a hostage to fortune, and there is fucking no chance, because I'll tell you what happens. Swine the Forkbeard dies. And all of a sudden, she is sat in Normandy with this sad sack husband and her brothers saying that she's probably going to have to get married again, and they're dictating the terms of her son's exile. And this woman spots the opportunity of a fucking lifetime, and she heads back to England with Ethelred in tow. And everybody at this point goes, you know, she was a hostage, she was forced to do this. Was she fuckers like? And we'll go in the next bit in a minute.